we talking about? Me failing to answer a question, I think.
um, deciphering No Man's
Oh,
Land.
yes, yes, yes. Um, the part that Patrick Stewart plays is a man whose memory has been shot to smithereens by age and alcohol. Um, and he has only a tentative hold on his memory, or indeed where he actually is at any one time. So if you're if you're in his life, you can, your choice is to either what's the word, indulge him by pretending he's making sense, or by shaking him and saying, pull yourself together. My character does a bit of both, to no effect. And so the man is left open to being controlled by people who don't particularly wish him well. So I think that story is fairly clear. But the details of it, well, when they go into apparent reminiscence about the past, it's no use the audience getting worried that they don't quite understand where they are. The characters don't quite understand where they are. That's the point. So, I don't think it's a difficult play from once you accept that that's the situation. And also, all the characters are drunk. It's like overhearing long conversations in a pub. Can you make head and a tail of them? A bit like that. But written in the most exquisite language possible. Very funny.
Often Pinter employs silence as a way of speaking a language locked beneath, as he put it, which in No Man's Land appears to convey an underlying darkness sometimes, in place of a response to a question. There's also a bit of dark comedy in the work. How is this appealing to you?
Yes, I think, as Pinter himself said, the pauses and silences in his, which he marks in the script, have been rather overrated. Well, not overrated, but there's been too much discussion as to what they mean. As Pinter said when he did this play himself as an actor, he cut half the pauses that were necessary. Or they arrived in some other space. So basically what you've got is some sort of report as to what the first production was like, with its pauses of various lengths, but it's not that unusual to have a pause in a play. It's just that the playwright hasn't probably written it down. So, but you're right, it is dark. It is dark. I mean, the old drunk man is being manipulated by two rather ruthless younger men who are really taking advantage of it. And my character too is probably would do the same given half the chance. It's there's not a lot of merriment. The characters are not very merry. However, they are funny. That's another matter. So you've got the mixture of the darkness and the humour.
The role of Spooner was originally played by Sir John
Gielgud. Yep.
How do you feel you've been influenced by him, and how do you believe you put your own spin on the role?
Well, normally I would poo-poo that question as because I spend a lot of my time in the theatre playing parts other people have played and have been playing for 500 years. So think of them particularly as mine. But in this case, I can remember quite a lot of what John Gielgud did with the parts. He made it very much his own. So it would be a fool who tried to do anything like he did, because it was so personal to him. But it was a bother to me in rehearsal. I kept hearing Gielgud's voice. I did this afternoon at one point. I thought, I don't want him. There's nothing to do with me. So, but also the style of acting has changed. It's interesting in the 35 years since this play was written. I mean, Gielgud and Richardson, they were thriving in the 1920s, influenced by, therefore, Victorian theatre, stage acting. So it would be likely that we'd be doing something a bit different in style of acting, and perhaps delving a bit deeper than other people have done when they've been doing this play. But you're right. Both Richardson and Gielgud have cast their spell over the play. For those of us who saw them do it. And Patrick, who saw them do it 3 times, I think, in the 1 week, vowed that he would one day do the play. So he's very, very happy. It's an ambition achieved.
I think it was Patrick that said that people gasped when Sir Ralph Richardson fell on the ground, because he was considered a national jewel.
Yeah. Whereas they don't care when Patrick Stewart falls. No. Yes, I mean that's for actors it's become one of the famous things you have to do in that part. You have to fall down. Well, Richardson appeared to fall like that, which is almost impossible to do unless you're unconscious. But Patrick does something very inventive, but different.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but why was Berkeley chosen as a location for the previews and not L.A.? Or for example?
Well, because there isn't a theatre like this in Los Angeles, really. It's a non-for-profit, well-established theatre with rehearsal rooms and everything you need to put on a show, workshops. I don't think there is such a place as there in LA. Maybe in the LA Theatre Centre.
I think there are.
Oh, I suppose the Music Centre, you would say.
Yeah.
Yes, I suppose you would say, but this was. We considered La Jolla and Berkeley. I think those were the two.
I think maybe you wanted to go someplace you hadn't been before.
No, I don't think that was a consideration, but it was a happy outcome. But no, I think it was really that there was an organisation used to doing this sort of a play. Wouldn't surprise the audience that they were seeing an old Pinter play for the first time. The enthusiasm of the mailing list was so strong that tickets were never put on sale to the general public, so the audiences we're getting are really pretty discerning. They're keen, long-established theatre-goers. So that's a very nice way to put a play on, to know you've got it. As I say of the audience I offer, Hurst and the play interested and informed audience, an audience brimming over with the potential for the greatest possible enthusiasm. Sums up these houses.
don't know if you know that Berkeley is the place where the birth of the free speech movement happened, and so there's a long history of art and
Yes.
counterculture and culture
Yes.
here. Yeah.
And it's a very congenial place to be because we're all living close to the theatre, and we've become part of the family here, the Berkeley Rep. We're not lost in a big city. It's been good.
What intrigues you about theatrical productions in front of a live audience compared to making movies?
But it's my life. It's in the film there isn't a live audience. I mean, so there's no comparison really. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but no different. You can get into terrible trouble if you do have an audience and you're recording the performance for film. I've just been doing that with a sitcom in the UK. Very tricky. But both ways of telling stories are very demanding of actors, and I always miss an audience when I'm filming, and I must say of late I've missed the camera when I've been on stage. So.
Do you feel different, like nervous or anything in front of a live audience?
No.
No.
I don't know why, but
It's a sign of a
So far.
professional, I guess.
I mean, there've been occasions when I've been wished it hadn't been happening, but very, very rarely. No, I enjoy it too much.
And this is the question I was gonna ask you and Rafe, but I'll ask you now. You said there's a lot of love alongside the disciplined hard work that Rafe insists on. How has love and discipline taken its place in drama for you?
Well, discipline's very important, isn't it? If you do 8 shows a week, you've got to organise your life around that. People think, oh, you're just wandering in to do 2 hours a day. Well, not really. The day starts from the minute you get up. Worrying about things, is that a discipline as opposed to? And love, yes. I mean, respect for the author. That's what you're doing it for. You know, you're at his or her service. But the work that Rafe gets out of his charges is astonishing, and could make many a professional actor feel a little bit ashamed. They work so hard in hours. They're so diligent, and considering English probably is their second language, that they've come to grips with Shakespearean language, often very, very difficult Shakespeare, is incredible. And I haven't met any actor who's seen them at work who hasn't been extremely moved.
Did you see them when they came to London to the Globe? Is the Globe?
I didn't see them really do anything there, no. But I think probably they have most impact when they're in their schoolroom. Such an unlikely place to put on a play. And the sandwich is always good afterwards as well. And the music's good. Well, you can tell that. I mean, in front of your eyes, you see young people who are just so full of achievement and liveliness at an age when many of their peers are probably wondering how much longer have they got at school and will they ever get a job and what. Not looking forward to much of a future, but these are high achievers. Can't manage to be on time, but otherwise. No, I'm a big fan of what goes on in that school. And I first met Rafe and the generation. Was it 80s or 90s?
It was in the 80s,
I
late
think it
80s,
was in
about
the
80,
80s.
88, I think.
Yeah. I was doing a Shakespeare show at what's now the Geffen Playhouse in Westwood. And one matinee, there were, as I remember, 30 or 40, these 12-year-olds, joining in, shouting out, naming Shakespeare's plays, which is what I'm encouraging the audience to do. And then I went to visit them on their own turf. So live theatre has been a big part of my connection with them. And quite typical of him that Ray Theatre should bring some 12-year-olds to see No Man's Land. Which he began by saying some adults find a bit difficult. But these kids have done Measure for Measure, a play I don't understand. They've done King Lear, a play I've worked on for months and months and months and still wouldn't say I understand. And they have presented both those plays with an absolute clarity of intention and thought. Astonishing. Whether that comes from love or hard work or diligence, I don't know, but it happens.
Great, thank you so
Okay.
much.
I have one more question. Keith, do we have Ian talking about Richard III's remains coming up out of that parking lot? Has anybody asked you that?
No.
Did you have any reaction when you found out that they'd found him under there? And I guess now he's going to be reinterred at York Minster.
Yes.
Any plans to visit?
I don't feel any connection with him whatsoever.
No.
But, of course, that was astonishing. In the municipal car park, where there happened to be a letter R, I suppose R for reserved, probably marking someone's space,
Yeah.
they decided, just as a joke, to start on R, and it was under the R that they found the body, I mean, like a quarter of an hour later.
Yeah.
And other bodies too.
Yeah, there's a mystery coffin.
But the surprise to everyone was that Richard III actually did have something wrong with his spine, and it was a bit disturbing to see the supporters of Richard who have claimed that he was a good king, and that part of his goodness was that he was in immaculate physical shape. And the woman cried when she discovered that Richard III was actually what his enemies had always said he was, deformed.
Right.
Short, good looking, but a bad back. Which makes his exploits on the battlefield all the more remarkable, because he was clearly constricted. But I mean, all the discussion of what to do with the remains and the fascination of it being discovered and the possibility of on the skeleton working out what he looked like, identifying his height, etc., etc. That's all fascinating and draws attention to the fact that Shakespeare's plays isn't not much to do with the real character at all. I don't know whether Shakespeare would have claimed it was a history play. He calls it a tragedy. other plays he calls histories. So I suspect Shakespeare was saying, I'm basing it on Richard III. And anyway, the history around at the time, written by Thomas More and others, was no less reliable than Shakespeare. So, I mean, no more reliable than Shakespeare. So what is history? It's always a distortion, I suppose, isn't it?